Welcome to Black Writer Therapy, a podcast where Black women writers are invited to sit on the proverbial couch, have a cup of tea, and share the stories behind the stories, and what it really takes to write books about Black women in an industry that still prefers white as the default. I'm your host, published author and unlicensed therapist, Alishon. Black Writer Therapy is now in session.
Penelope has been writing since she could hold a pen and loves getting lost in the worlds in her head. She is an award-winning author of fantasy and paranormal romance. Equally left and right-brained, she studied filmmaking and computer science in college and sometimes dreams in HTML. She hosts the My Imaginary Friends podcast and resides in Maryland with her husband and furry dependents. And now here's your host, Alishon.
Welcome to Black Writer Therapy and the virtual couch.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, I'm always fascinated. You're one of these people who are both analytical and creative. Mm-hmm. And so how has that marriage worked for you in your choices of like how it manifests in your career and your writing and all the things?
Yeah, I found out quickly that that was the case. I always loved writing. I've been writing forever. Like, my mother was a teacher. She taught me to read at a very, very young age. And I always had an interest in science also. So when I was young, I really wanted to be a chemist. That was my life goal, because I didn't ever think that you could make a living as a writer. It didn't make sense to me,
right.
Like that. I want to eat,
Exactly.
But yeah. And then I started taking like high school chemistry and physics, and I didn't do as well as I wanted to do. Like, I figured if I was going to be a professional chemist, I should get an A in high school chemistry, and I got a B. And so I was like, maybe I need a different life path. Yeah, this is how my life works, right? Yeah. The B is like, this is not for you. But I still was interested in computer science, and I started doing like basic programming. And when we got our first computer, I was the only one in the home in middle school who knew how to, do anything with it. And I was always the one fixing the computers. So when it came to college, I was torn between majoring in computer science or in something more creative. And I ended up majoring in radio, TV, and film at Howard University, but I did minor in computer science. And so that was kind of a rare thing to do. But, I found that I was really happy doing both. I kind of needed to do both. I needed to write. It was really important to me. And I was mostly writing for myself. I did, submit some poems to publications, and there was literary magazines in high school and college and things like that. But I still didn't believe that I could be a writer, like a novelist as a job. And so I got I went into the field, and I got a master's in multimedia. And when I, looked at getting a master's degree, it was like, okay, what's going to combine all my interests? And I had this I had started making websites, and I, majored in film. And also there's this computer science programming aspect. And, there was a business aspect, there was a graphic design aspect to that. So I think my life has always been about kind of melding these interests and trying to just live holistically like that, because I exist in a space where I kind of do need to do both. I'm not happy if I'm only doing one or the other.
Right. That's really interesting. I think you're like most artists. And I don't think people recognize that artists are so kind of analytical. And but then it would make complete and total sense that an artist of any modality would be kind of right brain oriented as well as left brain oriented. I just don't know that many who follow the right brain.
Right.
So
and then sometimes
much.
we are told that, you have to be one or the other. So you kind of push down certain parts of yourself. But, when you're evaluating your own art, whatever it is, you have to bring an analytic mind to it. You have to say, is this what I was trying to do? Is this what, the audience is going to, like, how is the audience going to react to this? If you care about that. And a lot of artists do, you want to express yourself, but you also want people to take something away from it and to be moved or whatever. So that requires an analytic, nature, at least as it comes to your own work.
I totally agree. But again, most artists don't think about it like that. They're just doing the art thing, So you are an alumna of Vona, which is Voices, and Hurston
writers workshop.
Mm-hmm.
Now, tell us about that experience for you, why you chose it, and what you got out of it.
So when I originally got married and moved away to a new town, to Norfolk, Virginia, and I got involved in a writer center there called the Muse Writer Center, and those are really my first writing workshops, like post high school and college. And I was working on short stories, and I just really liked the workshop experience. It forced me to write, giving
Mm-hmm.
pages to people every few weeks. And it was through being involved in like an ongoing writing workshop for a couple of years that I found out about these other places you could go and work on your writing with, professional writers and well-known authors. And so I learned about Vona Voices, which is Voices of Our Nation's Arts. And it was at the time, it was at UC Berkeley. And it was a week in June, I think, where you could study. And I applied to study with Junot Diaz, the Pulitzer Prize winner. And I got in and
Mm-hmm.
I got to study with him. And it was amazing. And it just kind of really changed my life. And that is specifically a workshop for writers of color. And Hurston Writers for Black writers, and it's on the campus of Howard University. And so I studied with Dolan Perkin Valdez the first time. I went back and studied with David Anthony Durham, who is a fantasy author. And so I actually went to both of them twice. And it was just the time to take away. Usually during the summer, you can take a week off of work and focus on your writing, be in a workshop with other writers who are ostensibly, doing the similar things, learning from people who are in the field. And then usually they have some other, programming to help you learn about the publishing industry, for example,
Right.
and other aspects of it. So I found my time at those workshops to be super helpful, really inspiring, really challenging in a way, because I had been in workshops, but they were primarily white people. And,
Mm-hmm.
me writing Black characters, having those experiences of people not understanding what I was doing, or I didn't have any terrible experiences, but I had some not so great ones where I was like, okay,
Yes.
y'all are not just, you're not feeling me. And I don't want to let that energy, change what I'm trying to do, because I feel confident in what I'm trying to do. So let me try to find some people who can relate more,
Right.
and yeah, both of them, I highly recommend both of them. And they were just really, really, really important in my journey towards actually believing I could do this thing called like publish a book and see it on the shelves.
Right. And be a writer as a job.
Exactly. Yes.
That's really neat. Yeah. I've not heard of any of these things. So I was really like keen when I saw them. Um, and I just want to ask you one other question from your bio, because, well, two, I'm an animal lover and you have furry dependents. And
Yes.
I want to know what kind of furry dependents you have.
So I have two dogs.
Mm-hmm.
They're both pit bulls essentially. One's an American bully and one is an Amstaff. And I have two cats. So yeah, it's a pretty full house here.
Yeah, yeah, it sounds similar to mine. I said I'm one dog short of you. So
Okay.
yeah, two cats and one dog. So yeah, very good. Imaginary friends. I love your podcast.
Thank you.
I love your podcast. I think I noted that, hey, I reached out to you like forever ago.
All
It was
right.
like a long time ago, and you were just getting started with your podcast.
Mhm.
Um, so how's that been going for you?
I do love podcasting. It's been 4 years. I think I've had to take a break because I was traveling, but the next episode
Mhm.
I do would be episode 220. And it's a solo podcast. So it's just me talking because
Mhm.
I just realized I couldn't organize guests. When I was starting it, it was just daunting. I applaud all of you who do. And sometimes I wish, like, I liked talking to people and I would like to. I have an idea for another podcast that would be guest centered, but, time is finite. Um,
Yes.
but I do. I like sharing the journey. And then I hear from listeners and from people who enjoy listening to it, because I'm literally talking to imaginary people. I'm talking to myself here and just giving an overview of, the past week in my author life, the struggles, the wins, all the ups and downs. I try to be
Mhm.
as honest as possible, share as much as I can, because there's some transparency, but there's not enough transparency. And I meet lots of, aspiring writers who just have
Mhm.
no idea what the industry is like, whether it's self-publishing or traditional publishing. And they're both so hard, and there's so much
Yes.
involved in both of them. So just sharing my experience is a way to kind of give it back, and also just have me clarify my thoughts, a little bit of accountability,
Mhm.
and just, yeah, keep myself grounded a little bit.
Yeah, I love that. I think I call that like metacognition is what
Mm.
it reminds me of, right? When you're processing your thoughts and thinking about why and how you're thinking.
Right.
And I remember my first podcast, I was solo, and it was the greatest thing. I think I did it for 4 years, and because again, we started around the same time. We had the solo podcast, and I was working out not only like my growth as a
Mhm.
writer, but as a woman, everything was changing in my life at that time, right? And I think and I was working out what was happening in the series that I
Mm.
was writing.
Mhm.
And it just helped so much to be able to talk all the things through.
Yeah.
And then I could go back and plug in what I needed. I worked my stuff out. I worked my character stuff out. So yes, I get the solo podcast is awesome. And you're right. This organizing of guests is daunting, but it's been ridiculously rewarding.
Mhm.
And I think for me, I'm at this place where I just want to shake stuff up, and
Mhm.
I want to I want to hear the truth, right?
Yeah.
I want to hear the truth from writers who look like me, who
Mhm.
are doing what I aspire to do, what I have done, all the things.
Yeah.
It's kind of like I need to go workshop this piece of writing with people who are going to get it and can relate to
Yes.
it. Um, and then the other half of this is I do want those folk who are yelling, allyship, I'm an ally. I want them in on these conversations so that they can hear the truth of Black women writers and
Mm.
not all the fallacies and mixed up nonsense that's
Mhm.
floating around out
Right.
there. So that's kind of what I'm doing. Before we go any further, I have to ask you my question that I ask every writer. How are you healing today?
Mm. I have been trying to meditate twice a day for the past few months. And sometimes I do, sometimes I don't, but it has been really helpful. Like I've tried to meditate on and off for many years. And, some at different times in my life it would stick and then it would fall away. And so now I'm just really trying to grow my intuition and listen to it more. And so I feel like meditation is helping that, and it's helping me heal. Pandemic, the past few years have been difficult for everyone, and there's been all kinds of, personal and family issues that I've gone through too recently. So yeah, that's the way I'm currently really focusing on trying to, like, 20 minutes in the morning and 20 minutes in the evening is my goal. And I don't hit it every day, but I'm really committed to working on that. And it's when I do, I just feel the difference. And I feel like, that quietness, centered, focused on breath, just a simple meditation, nothing too fancy. But yeah, that's how I'm working on healing.
I love that. And that's an ambitious goal. And I don't think people understand. Like people, 20 minutes of just sitting, anybody can do that.
It's,
No,
yeah,
because
not,
it's
not
hard.
easy.
It is so hard because you want to, I know, like if I'm meditating, I want to push all the thoughts away, but
Hmm.
but you're not, right? You just have to let them come and go until your
Yeah.
mind gets quiet. And I'm just like impatient. I want the quiet. And so
Right.
that's like the hardest part for me. So kudos, and I send you karuna, uh, so a little compassion and mercy as you are on your meditation journey. And that's a beautiful way to start the healing. Um, all right. So we're ready to get into the first segment of the show, which is called Intentional Writing. And I chose that title for the segment because of the medical definition of the word intention, which is the healing process of a wound. And since I learned that, I don't know the other definition of intentions anymore. So it's all about healing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is why I asked all the writers, what is your most cathartic book and why? So could you share that a little bit of why you chose the book and what book you chose?
So yeah, I chose Requiem of Silence, which is book 4 of the Earth Singer Chronicles, which is my epic fantasy series. It's the final book. There's 4 novels and 3 novellas. So if you look at the whole series, it's the last of 7. And this entire series is about these 2 people. They're different races. One people have magic, one don't, who have been at war for hundreds of years in this alternate world. And the question is, will this war continue or will this war end? Will they be able to live peaceably together or not? And each novel kind of focuses on different characters. It's also a fantasy romance, and there are sort of star-crossed lovers in different books. But facing this idea of, okay, I'm ending the series after had been writing the series for 6 or 7 years. Like I self-published originally. I started writing the first book in 2013. Actually, right after that workshop with Junot Diaz, I came home and literally a few days later, I started writing and I just couldn't stop. And so yeah, a huge number, like a big amount of time was spent on the series, looking towards the end, but not knowing how I was going to end it. And I have had this, racial strife. I have this huge conflict, and I can't solve racism in my book necessarily, but I have to solve the story.
Right.
And I really struggled with that. And I was writing it at, right around the time that Game of Thrones had ended, poorly in my opinion. The original series. There was a lot of controversy about the ending of that. I think Infinity War, so that Avengers was ending. There were these big series and big franchises ending in ways that people were either happy or not happy about. And I was thinking, how can I end this so that the readers who have been with me through this journey, who have read all of these books, been with these characters for such a long time, and really taken it to heart, that in a way that will be satisfying for them and that will make sense for the story. And even though I'm a plotter, but I knew kind of where I wanted things to go. I had the idea of the end, but none of the details mapped out. And so I was really just doing a lot of soul searching for, what am I trying to say with this? Like how this conflict ends. There are a lot of real world parallels in the whole series to our life. Like in the first book, Song of Blood and Stone, is essentially a police shooting, of a young brown-skinned boy. And so there's these parallels to our life that happen in this fantasy world that was really important to me to have in there. So I've set it up to be, this parallel. And yeah, how did I want to end it? Soul searching to figure out what do I believe could be a possible real life solution to our real life conflicts. If I was in charge, how would I do things? If I was the emperor or empress, like all that stuff, because we're the deities of our own worlds when we're writing, and we get to do what we want. So that's why it was cathartic to me, because it allowed me to confront my ideas about, I guess, about racism and community and how people can come together, what keeps us apart. That's what I was doing throughout the whole series. And just trying to figure out a way to bring it home, to bring the story to a satisfying conclusion that acknowledges, that these are such complicated, difficult, entrenched human problems. And so I brought a lot of spirituality to that. I brought, and that's present in the book as well. And yeah, just sort of my ideas about how I want things to be, or how I think they could be.
I love that. Gosh, I don't know that we recognize at the time, or maybe you're a very conscientious writer and you know exactly what it is you're putting into your books that will reach and connect with your audience on not so much the emotional, because we all do the emotional appeal and all of that, but the kind of spiritual level that I find so prevalent in Black women's writings. It's almost like a little thin layer that's kind of floating on the top of everything, innocuous and unassuming, but always present. And so is that something that, because in the 4th book, you said, yes, I consciously threw in this spirituality, but do you find that you write in that vein throughout all of your works, or no?
I do. I think so. And you never know how people are going to take what you're putting in there. But I do believe, and I've talked about on my podcast, like the idea of bleeding on the page. Like, I think that I'm writing to get something across. I'm writing to share a part of myself. And that involves putting, some blood in there. You're going to put something that is meaningful to you and sort of look at it through a different lens and through the story and the characters and all of that. But I wonder if that's why, like, especially with Black women's writing, and even, the greats, your Toni Morrison and Alice Walker's, and Gloria Naylor is a huge influence of mine. You see that. And whether it's, I don't know that it's conscious. I think that it's just when you're working things out on the page and you're bringing your observations and your filter to it, that comes through, because so much of our life, I think, it hinges on spirituality. So yeah, I there's a religious aspect of this series where I'm dealing with what are gods and goddesses, who do we worship, and what happens when you discover, there's gods awakening throughout the series and coming to life, and you're confronted with this deity that you had worshipped, from a distance, and now they're up close, and what does that mean? So those kinds of things I'm really, I consider a lot and think about and put in my books, as well as sort of, okay, when spirituality is more internal, because I've gone through a whole spiritual journey in my life of religion and all of that. And so since that's top of mind, I'm trying to work some of that out on the page as well through the characters.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah, that's really interesting. And I think, again, you're just kind of proving why I choose the writers I choose, because I vibe with that. It was brought to my attention that all the writers, I'm the commonality. And so obviously there's something that I was like, I didn't think about that. I was just like, I like the way they write. I like the way their book covers look, as I don't read book blurbs. So now we are going to eventually talk about the series as a whole, but I was like a little, nitwit. I started reading the book you said was the most cathartic. And I was like, honey child, honey boo boo child, you don't know
Don't
what the
start
ham and
there.
eggs is going on. What are you doing? You can't just jump. So,
Right?
because I am a transparent girl, I couldn't read the book because I have to go back, right? When I tell you my TBR list is ridiculous from this season alone, and I'm like, I don't even know when I'm going to get to everything.
I know,
because
it's so
all
hard.
the books are ridiculously good, right?
Yeah.
But I love fantasy. I can't write it. Nothing in me will be that like, oh, let's dream up a whole new situation and put it together, a whole new world, and make it work. Like,
Right.
But I'm going to get to that. I'm getting ahead of myself because the world building is ridiculous.
Thank you.
Anyway, so, but I picked some parts that I like structural, things that kind of stood out to me when I gleaned your book. Okay, I'm using all my former English teacher terminology here. Glean the book, tell me what you get from it, students. So the first couple of lines of the prologue, they establish the sense for me, and I think for the old man, of expectation, of yearning. And then the last 4 lines of the prologue, it's like they leave the old man and me with a foreboding kind of disquiet. And the juxtaposition in that short piece, just the prologue, the juxtaposition of the very first and then the very last, it feels like a warning to me. Now, obviously, I have absolutely no frame of reference for anything. This is just Ella's mind doing what Ella's mind does, right?
Yeah.
So I copied the lines that I'm talking about. But you just grabbed your book.
I did. Yeah.
Because like if I can get you to read that,
Yeah, I can I'll read the prologue. That probably is a good idea.
yes.
So yeah, it kind of does, stand alone. You don't you don't hear from this character again, if I can remember this book. But yeah, it does connect to everything. So yeah, I'll read the prologue for Requiem of Silence. In the end, there will be silence. Nothing but the warm embrace of the flame, and then peace. The old man knows this and has waited for longer than he ever thought possible. He will wait a bit longer, for while he is old now, he was also old centuries ago. He suspects he will be old for centuries more before he can finally meet the flame and be done with it all. But even death cannot come before duty, not for one of his line. The prophecy that came to him generations ago has never left the forefront of his mind. It seeped in and spread like a dye, staining everything that it touched. The one who walks in darkness will embrace the light. He stands at the mouth of a cave of his beloved mountain mother, staring at the world outside that has claimed so many of his kind. The rays of the sun pepper fevered kisses on his face, a harsh kind of love. He cannot become used to it. Outside is not for him. Soon a visitor will arrive, one he has been expecting for a long time. He thinks perhaps this visitor is the key to the prophecy. Darkness and light rolled into one. He waits, and when the visitor arrives, the young man is haggard, but bears it well. His eyes are alight with charm and mischief. The prophet has a moment of misgiving. However, this does not stop him from leading the visitor up a barely used trail to a cave on the outskirts of the city where they won't be disturbed. There, he makes the greatest mistake of his life. There, he teaches the visitor something that no outsider should know, even one with familiar skin. Perhaps it was the prophecy that duped him, or the fact that the visitor is only a generation removed from those who left the caves to live outside. Had this seeker's foreparent not left, he would have already known this secret. Could have known it, at least. No matter now, the deed is done. The knowledge passed from prophet to man. As the visitor's head bobs away down the narrow path, the prophet has another shudder of misgiving. But surely the mother would not have allowed him to do something that would harm his people. All he ever wanted to do was save them. He watches the visitor's retreat and hopes that teaching him the cave folk secrets was the right decision. He will ask the mother about it soon.
Very nice. I could just listen to you read.
Thank you.
Oh, wow. That's relaxing.
That's what people say about the podcast too.
Yes, you have that really kind of, I'm going to calm you down because I'm calm voice. It's great.
Thank you.
Really great. So was that the intent, that juxtaposition? Did you like say, hey, I'm going to make people feel real confused about what they're going into, and I want them to be a little bit leery and be paying close attention. I want to warn them about some things.
Yeah. So this prologue is it answers some questions that you might not understand what's happening here, but by the end of the book, you'll know who these characters are. And depending, you might recognize the characters if you read everything closely. But it's like the beginning of the end. It's like, an inciting incident. This actually happened hundreds of years ago, this scene, but it impacts, it's like kind of the reason for the whole story, the whole series. And so, yeah, I wanted the reader to start understanding or put the seeds of these questions and like, okay, who is this? What are they talking about? Is this what I think it is? Or maybe maybe you don't know. And then be left with, kind of a sense of dread, like foreboding, like, okay, this was actually the wrong decision. This sets off all of these events. So it's conscious that, I want to tell this story. I needed to give the reader the information about the origins of this particular event in a way that was a little bit oblique. And because there's other prologues in the other books, it kind of matches it. The first line of the first book, I believe, is in the beginning, there was silence. So I wanted the first line of the fourth book to be in the beginning, in the end, there will be silence, like that mirroring.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's kind of the emotion. I know, that kind of emotional, because it's the emotions of the character too, that were like hope. And then, did I just do something wrong?
Yeah. Yeah. Very good. So the other thing that I want to kind of stick to with Requiem and then move into the body of work overall,
Mm-hmm.
the quotes at the beginning of each chapter.
Mm-hmm.
Where did you get the quotes? Because I am a stickler for some good, like, ooh, I love this. Where did you get these quotes?
All the novels start with epigraphs for each chapter from an in-world book. So I have to write the in-world book, or at least the parts of it that you see at the beginning of each chapter. And all four books, and all the novellas, I think, most of the novellas have, and it's a process at the end. So after I've written the book, and I know what the chapters are going to be, because I change my chapters as I'm going, but I feel confident about the number of chapters, what's in each chapter. Then I kind of go into review and like, okay, what's the in-world book? This for Requiem of Silence, it's a book that is written in the future by one of the characters. And by the end of the book, you'll realize, okay, this is the path that she is on. She is going to be kind of to be the originator of a new religion. And so the Harmony of Being, which is the in-world book of Requiem of Silence, it also kind of is a mirror to Song of Blood and Stone, the first book in the series, where the chapter epigraphs come from a book called Collected Folk Tales. And they are, folk tales featuring animal characters that a lot of people really like those too. And at the beginning, it's like, okay, these are folk tales. It's supposed to tell you more about the culture, but they're also telling you how the culture is broken in some way, or this history has been changed and lost, and they're supposed to be a little off. Whereas in Requiem of Silence, this in-world book is sort of the future and the hope. So I'm hoping that it's more inspiring. It's more a feeling of, at least this character who wrote this has found some kind of truth and wants to share it with the world. And we're giving more good advice, whereas the first book is maybe not so good advice.
Look, you are brilliant. I'm serious. I'm just sitting here. If I, could put an emoji on this, it would be the one with the brain exploding. What the world? Because I'm going to tell you what I did. First thing I did when I noticed all the quotes, I'm like going through, oh my God, these are beautiful. I love this. Oh my God. So I Googled the Book of Harmony.
Oh, wow.
Because I'm like, I want to see where she got this from. I want to read this freaking book.
Oh, that's amazing.
Some book comes up by some dude in 1977.
That doesn't sound right.
Oh, you are ridiculous. And this
Oh.
is why I can't write fantasy. This right here, you don't only build the world, you have to build everything, their religion, their cultures, their all of it. And it's like, well, let me just, write end of the world books while I'm writing a book.
I mean, everybody's doing world building, but yeah, fantasy. But I love it. I love digging deep into it and getting complex. This is a big series. It's fun to me. It was challenging. All the epigraphs were really challenging to write a whole nother, like after I wrote the book, I have to write a whole nother book. It's just pieces that have to make sense in small pieces. I think my favorite, book 2 in the series, Whispers of Shadow and Flame, the epigraphs, or is it book 3? Oh, now I can't remember. I think it's one of the books. I wrote this epic poem, like think of the Ballad of Gilgamesh. That was my goal. So each piece of it is like it's a whole story being told in the epigraphs about a character that you're going to meet in this book. And I don't know if people get it, but like I do put a lot of work into the chapter epigraphs for all of the novels.
Yes, yes. I promise you, Leslie, I was like, where is she gatekeeping this book?
I've hidden it.
And you wrote those.
Yeah.
That your mind worked. I'm telling you, I am not easily impressed. I'm serious. I am not easily impressed. And that's just because I'm me. And I think people are constantly saying, you are amazing, and giving those out when people are mediocre. So I am completely impressed.
Thank
like,
you.
I'm ready to just sit here and listen to you talk about how you wrote this series, how you create a world this in depth and still somehow maintain a steadfast hold here in this world.
In this world. And not
you know
get
what I'm
lost.
saying?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I would definitely, that's one of my fears. I'm like, if I ever got that deep into a world that I'm creating, I like I would just get stuck. That's my fear, right?
Yeah.
Dementophobia. I'm scared that I would become insane and just stay in my world because
Yeah.
it's mine. I can keep it.
It's leaving it was tough, like finishing the series and being like, okay, this is probably it. I don't know that I'll come back. I mean, maybe, but I don't know that I'll come back to this. Well, that I spent almost a decade in, when it was all said and done. But yeah, I do love it. I teach a class on world building because I do love talking about it and diving deep. I've been happy, like in the past couple of years, writing books that take place in our world. Or I have another series that's dystopian, but it's dystopian based on our world. But I am looking forward to my next epic fantasy where I can dive deep and dig and make a whole nother brand new place that I can live in for a while.
That's scary. I'm serious. It scares me on a psychological level
Mm-hmm.
to do that. I mean,
I think it helps
I
that
obviously no,
well,
go ahead.
it helps that it's not a utopia. I'm not creating places that are amazing to live in. So getting lost, it's like these are hard places. And, you're trying to build something that people are not. I don't believe in like books full of that they're only pain, like sort of, black pain. That we've seen a lot of entertainment properties that I think are focused on black pain, and even books that are just mired in that. And you have to have conflict for a story, but I really want joy ultimately. I want sometimes bittersweet, but ultimately joy. But yeah, these worlds are difficult and they're hard. And so yeah, getting lost in them, I've never thought about that. You're immersed in it, but it's not necessarily a place where I would want to live.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that would help, but then I think the mind wouldn't even accept a utopic place, so you wouldn't have to worry about getting stuck in some place that was perfect, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, my mind would be like, yeah, this is, but I'm the God here. I'm the creator of all of this. I
Mm-hmm.
knew when I ended my series, 4 books, and I think I started writing it in 2013 as well. Like that's why I have this podcast. That's another reason I have this podcast. I was like so depressed
Mm.
when I finished with the 4th book. And I was just like, is this normal?
Right.
I said, this can't be normal. This cannot
I think
be
it
a
is.
normal thing to
Just to
be
be to
this
have that
like,
sad.
really?
I mean, you spent a long time on it. You're not going to be there anymore. There's a sadness. I wouldn't say I was really depressed, but there was a sadness and like a catharsis that I had to go through to move on to the next project and to really be like, okay, oh, can I do their children? Can I do this? But like, no, I think I'm gonna move on to other things.
Yeah, I was depressed. I'm not gonna lie. I was depressed and I was just like, what's next?
Mm-hmm.
And what's going to happen to them? How are they going to continue?
Yeah,
Will they
I did think of that.
continue?
Like,
Like
what is
all
in
the
the future of
crazy, and
these
these are the
characters?
craziest thoughts because
Well, we're writers and they're real to us, right? These people are real.
even more so than people I know in my life,
Mm.
these people are real to me.
You know more about them than people in your life, but
Exactly. Exactly. But yeah, I was like, I need Black writer therapy. I need somebody to help me get over this. And so yeah, that's partially where it came from. So has writing been a form of therapy for you before you became a published author?
Definitely. I wrote as a child, extremely introverted. Very like I couldn't back when there was Blockbuster, I was so shy that even the idea of taking a video and going in to return it to Blockbuster was terrifying for me because it's like, well, what if I can't find the slot, which is clearly marked, and I have to talk to someone, ask someone where the slot is to, like talking to people I didn't know was terrifying. So I stayed home, I wrote, I read. My parents would go to a party like a family event, with I would go and find a bedroom and sit and read. So like I was, antisocial and introverted. And writing was really the way that I got my feelings out. I got my opinions out when I didn't want to talk to people I didn't know. And it was really important to me as a child growing up. And I was in, I went to not just mostly white schools, which too, but I went to all white schools where I was literally the only Black person in the school, had ever been in the school in this one particular case. And so there were just a lot of, and this was second grade, third and fourth grade. There was maybe my brother was the only other Black child in the elementary school.
Wow.
So, there were these isolating events, and because of the places that we lived until we moved to Maryland, where it was a little bit better. And so reading, writing was my outlet, and it's what I always thought it kept me sane.
Yeah. And I think again, same experiences, right? And not so much the why, but the what.
Mm-hmm.
The what of it. And do you still write to keep you sane, or have you found another way to maintain the sanity, and now writing is the passion, the love, all of that?
I think it has shifted, definitely. I realized I don't write a lot of poetry anymore like I used to. And that was another way where it was just pure emotion, Now I'm really, especially since publishing, and even probably since back when I started the workshops, when I'm writing, knowing at least someone else is going to read it, whether it's a critique partner or, I'm going to publish it and it's going to go out to the world, that changes things. So it's more, I do it because I love it. It is still a passion, and I love, reading, and I want to contribute to the world in that way. And I think I've found other healthy ways, the self-care, learning about that, knowing about that, and doing things for me that help to offload the emotion and help me process the emotions that have been difficult, that I used to just journal in poetry and short stories that were kind of crazy. And then now I can direct that in better, healthy. I mean, I wasn't unhealthy, but like I can spread it out more.
Yeah. I've poured all of I used to journal poetry, all the things, and now I just pour it all into crochet, because it's something very meditative about just doing the same, your stitches and all the things. But yes, so yeah, I crochet to stay sane and to keep people around me safe. And then the writing, right? That's my passion and my love. I have several questions, right? That I gave the option, and you chose these questions, and you were fine answering them. Writer or Black writer?
So the question had the word pejorative in it. And I think that's why I wanted to answer, because I don't view Black writer as pejorative. I'm sure there are some people who do, but I view it as clarifying, And so I'm actually agnostic on it, but I like being Black. I like being a Black writer. I like having that be known. I don't necessarily think that, if for the people who view that, let's say non-Black people specifically, because Black people have different reasoning for not liking it, and I respect that reasoning, even though I don't necessarily agree. But if non-Black people look at that pejoratively, or look at that as a way to box you, that's not my business, and that's not my problem. I'm writing Black characters. I'm writing about Black issues that, I'm reflecting, like I said before, our world, and filtering. All my stories are going to be Black. So if that adjective is not in front of the word writer, once you pick up my books, it's going to be very clear, I think. So that's why I don't have a problem with it. And I highlighting that I am Black is giving you some information about what you're going to be getting when you look at my work.
I've not heard that perspective. So thank you.
Sure.
Thank you for that. And I struggled with that in the beginning. I don't know. I struggled with it. I'm like, because when you say Black writer, then you mean I'm over here. And right. I'm not everywhere like everybody else. Yeah. And then the truth of the matter is I write Black characters, and I write, yes. And so now you've given me something to think about.
Glad. I think my response is similar for the bookshelf debate, whether African-American fiction should be its own or should be mixed in. I get it. I understand the problems that people have with an African-American fiction section being over here. But at the same time, if I'm looking for Black books, I want to be able to look for Black books because I want to be able to read Black books. And it's a very valid criticism to say we shouldn't be segregated. We shouldn't be over here. We are fiction. Everybody else is over here. I get it. But, I find it useful at the same time. So there's these different sides to the coin where it's like, these are the things that we're concerned with and that are important to us. And is it a good way to find those things? Is it a helpful descriptor? Maybe the intent was, who knows what the intent was to segregate us, but in practice, is it useful? Is it helpful for people to be like, hey, this is what I want to focus on. I want to read more Black books. I want to be able to find them easily. But I totally understand the other point of view. And it does have a lot of validity because, we are writing books and everyone can read them. And if it makes, I think it was a long time before I understood that when you put Black people on a cover, there are non-Black people who feel like, oh, this book isn't for me. That's the way that they feel. Once again, not my business. It affects business, but I'm putting Black people on the cover because I want to see Black people on the cover and I want you to know what's in my book. And if you feel that book's not for you, that's a you problem. That maybe there are other things we can do to say, hey, okay, yes, you can read this too. It's okay. It's not just for us, but there, sometimes you get asked the question about writing for the white gaze and dealing with the white gaze. And that's never a consideration for me. Like the white gaze is not something I think about. I just think about what story does Leslie want to tell? What does Leslie want to read? What did younger Leslie want to read?
Yes.
What do my friends want to read? And I write that. So
yes.
Long answer.
No, God, man, I'm serious. You're giving me a lot to think about because I don't know. I think I'm probably older than you. And so I'm from this kind of midway point between, being bused into white schools and ushering in MTV, right? And so that's where I am. And so I'm always torn. Am I a Black writer? I like having that moniker because again, it is self-identifying and tells you about what I'm doing, but also it is very like I don't know the intentions either, but I can always just kind of read the writing on the wall and let's relegate, right? It seems very relegating and othering to me on one hand, but then to hear you, I am like, wow, I have not thought of that perspective. And that is something that I think is important to hear, that Black writers hear and whoever else may tune in to this. It's important to hear. There's this other side and it's more pragmatic. And I think that's your right brain coming into play, right?
Yeah,
it's more pragmatic. This is a helpful thing for me. This is letting them know what they're getting and I don't have to do all the work anymore. And this is what it is. And so, yeah, thank you for that. And the last kind of, question about your writing and so forth. What do you hope to achieve with your writing? Overall, like your whole body of work, when Leslie Penelope's 105 and sitting on the porch with a kitty and your favorite tea. Do you drink tea?
I do. I'm a tea drinker.
Oh, yay. Because I'm so tired of hearing coffee and wine.
Oh, yeah. I don't drink either of those.
Me either. So tea, yay. So your favorite tea and your kitty and your hubby and whoever else, and you're sitting there. What will you have achieved with your body of work?
I came to this realization kind of this week. I have a newsletter I write for writers called Footnotes, and I was writing about this work in progress. And I got edits back from my editor, and they're very daunting. And I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. And all these other things are coming into my head. Well, will people like this book as much as they like the last book? And will I be able to pull this off in 6 weeks? Blah, blah, blah. And the thought came to me, your only job is to write something that's going to bless your readers. And I was like, oh, I can't control how much it sells. I can't control if people are even going to like it. But I can do my best to write something that I feel like will be a blessing. And what does that mean? It just means I think of the books that have changed me, that have blessed me, that have changed my life, that I think about, that I reread. And so what I'm hoping to do with my writing is really to bless my readers, is really to give them something that's entertaining, but that makes them think, that they can hold on to some characters that can live in their heads for a while, give them some solace or peace, take them away from their daily struggles, all of that. And all of that kind of constitutes a blessing. It's why we read. It's why I read. And it's why I wanted to write in the first place. So.
Beautiful. You're like the dopest guest. So, I mean, for real. I like, I see why Natalie said, you are going to love her. You are going to love her.
Natalie's great.
She is. She is wonderful. Okay. It's time to take a break, pay some bills. We'll be back with Penelope to discuss the audacity of Black women writers. We're back. If you're just tuning in, I've been chatting with award-winning fantasy paranormal writer, podcaster, Penelope. So, Leslie, if I were a real licensed therapist, what about dealing with the publishing industry would make you seek the respite of my couch?
Oh, so much. Oh, goodness. I actually do talk about publishing with my therapist because it's tough. I'm hybrid, so I do self-publishing and traditional publishing. And like I said before, they are both difficult. Traditional publishing, because there's so many people involved. I have an agent and a lawyer and an editor, and then all of the people at the publishing house, and they're bringing all of their own lives and struggles and personalities into the mix. And I'm trying to, it's their business relationships, and they're different kinds of relationships. And sometimes they're difficult, and sometimes they're easier than others. So managing relationships in terms of publishing on that side of it is difficult, and also managing the lack of control with traditional publishing. I'm currently in a place where we're going back and forth on the title of my next book. I wrote it with a title that I adored, and my editor did not adore it. And so I understood her points. I get what she was saying. So now it's like lists of dozens and dozens of titles, and like, wow. I don't know. I told you the one I liked. So, things that, and this is the first time I've actually had very good luck with all of my titles. Every book before now that has been traditionally published, I had the title, it was what came to me, and it was fine. So these things like cover designs, like I adore the covers of the Earth Singer Chronicles. They're beautiful. They are, but I had nothing to do with any of them. Like I didn't even give ideas. It was just like, here's the cover. I'm like, oh. So those kinds of things are frustrating when you're, and like I said, I have had very good luck, but one day there's going to be a cover that I don't love that's going to go out into the marketplace, and I'm going to have to be like, this is my book. And then I'm like hold it up, like, I don't love this cover, but I have to go and try to sell it anyway. So those kinds of things are difficult. And it's just like, you have to step back and, do what you have to do to manage your emotions about it. And to just, what I do is understand that this career is long. My goal is to have a long career, and that any one thing is not going to bring it down. There's always there's the next book. The advice that you're given a lot is, just write the next book. It's a marketing strategy. It's also just a sanity strategy. Because as you build up your backlist, each book is important to you. And I put my heart and soul into all of them. But if something happens and it doesn't go well, I'm going to write the next book.
Every time I hear stories about like traditional publishing, I just want to curl myself up in a ball and put my thumb in my mouth, get one of my crochet blankets, just sit there. Yeah. Because the lack of control and just, for me, I don't know. And yet I'm also ready to throw myself on the altar of traditional publishing.
Self-publishing is not easy either. It is very difficult to get anyone to know about your books, to care about them, the visibility, even with, it's always a struggle with my self-published books, and it's just different struggles. It's like, okay, what's the right book for the marketplace? You have to spend money on this and that, and finding the right people and schedules, and then all of the decisions are on your shoulders, which as a control freak is nice, but it's also like, I have to do everything. So
yeah. And so you have the best of both worlds, or the worst of both worlds, right? Or however they toss up whenever they toss up, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. I'm like, one or the other, man. I think I'd have to go one or the other, because it's like, I can't deal with this and all of this with self-publishing. And then you want me to do, but you're a brilliant girl. So, and even pop, you're even keeled. I think.
I am pretty even keeled. Yeah.
So. Yeah, I'm a lusty wench. So I bring all the fire. I bring the fire. So yeah, I don't know. I'm working on it. And this is the perfect segue into our second segment, which is the audacity of Black women writers. What is it that gave Leslie, Penelope, the audacity to know that she could enter the publishing industry and take up and make space for herself and thrive?
It's a journey. I think that people who know my family know me as that very introverted person are kind of always amazed if they come to a book event and see me speaking in front of people and teaching workshops and all of that stuff, because it's been a journey, a lot of intentionality. I think that always being an artist, studying film, being an independent filmmaker for a while, the things that I wanted to do forced me to break out of my shell. It's like, I can't live my dreams if I don't push myself further than my comfort zone, out of my comfort zone, further than my limits. And I did start self-published because I had heard all the stories about, the horrors of the publishing industry. And I honestly didn't think that anyone would want, this fantasy story with these brown people in it. Like, who's publishing that? Especially when I first published in 2015. It's not like it is now when there's lots of that. There was very few. And even to this day, I have this 4-book epic fantasy series. There's only one other Black author who has an epic fantasy series of more than 3 books traditionally published, and that's Evan Winter with Rage of Dragons. I've looked.
Wait a minute. Wait, I'm interrupting. Not to be rude, but the fact that you have sat here on my couch and said there is one other, which makes 2.
This is
epic fantasy. Are you serious?
Of more than 3 books. There's a few others have trilogies, but if you take Yeah. And epic fantasy series tend to be longer. You've got people with 12, 15, 20 books in series that get published. Um, we couldn't find any, and I believe that there's the idea that I don't we'll get to it in the future, like there's not an audience for this is very prevalent, and they haven't published much. And but Black people love fantasy. Like you love fantasy, I know lots of Black people who love fantasy, and they don't have enough for us, and they don't let us. I'm not going to say let us, but I mean the publishing industry as it stands is going through changes, but it still doesn't have all of we haven't had a chance to do all of the other do all the things and tell all the stories that we have to tell. So I think that audacity was, I started self-publishing because I knew that, and I had experience as an independent filmmaker and doing an independent literary magazine and other DIY type things, that it just made sense for me to do it myself. And when I was approached by a Black woman editor at Macmillan, at St. Martin's Press, to republish the series, and I took it off the market and published it with them, it was a leap of faith. Mm-hmm. So I guess you can call it audacity, but it was always just like, I don't know if this is going to work, but I'm going to try it. I'm going to do, because this is what I want to do. And I believe I can. I've confidence in myself as a smart person and as a talented person and as a person who works really hard. And I'm going to just give everything my all and see what happens, because there's so much I can't control. So the things mm-hmm. I can control, I will do to the best of my ability, and we'll see what happens.
That's audacity. That's audacity. I'm just going to see what happens, because if nothing else, I know me. I trust me and my abilities and my talents. That's mm-hmm. audacity. I'm still sitting over here like, it's two. In the year of our Lord, Beyonce, there are two.
And mine is the only one completed, because he's still working on his, but like he has the contract, so we'll give him that. But yeah, it's I don't know what to say.
I mean, what can you say? Right? I mean, because this industry, man, when I started researching the publishing industry, not because I was thinking about going the traditional route, I just started researching because I realized I need to know the business, right? Mm-hmm. As an entrepreneur, I need to understand and understand the business so mm-hmm. that I can make my way. And the more research I did, the more I was like, why is this still a thing in publishing? And why are they allowed to continue in this vein?
But I mean, entertainment, TV, film, it's the same. I mean, it's all similar, all dealing with similar problems and issues.
So, fantasy writer, are we going to get something that attacks this? How do you heal this? How do you make this better? Off the cuff, how do you make this better?
In the industry?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that, I've been fortunate. I've worked with 2 publishing houses with 2 Black women editors. We need more of us at the table making the decisions, acquiring books. That's starting to happen. More agents, editors, all the way up, publicists, salespeople, booksellers. I think that's how we change it. We get people at the table with decision-making powers who have a broader perspective and understand, there's plenty of people out there who want this. We're seeing, successes here and there and different properties. Once we're given a chance, there is a market for this. And if you feed it and you promote it, then you can find the audience. You can say, I don't know how to sell this. I don't know what the audience is. Well, you found an audience for the other things. You can find an audience because it exists.
Right. I mean, but I don't understand. My thing is this: Black folk are the biggest consumers.
Mm-hmm. And Black women read the most books. We buy the most books. Yeah,
we do. And so how they can fix it all and say there's not really a wide audience for anything a Black woman's going to put out there.
Yeah.
Lies you tell, sows you sell. Pennies wasted in the wishing well. But that's okay. That's okay. Because again, there is this kind of innate audacity that I love seeing and Black women writers. And that
Mhm.
is my focus primarily. And I know there are other folk out there who doing the darn thing, and
Mhm.
Black men are out there doing the darn thing, but I happen to be a Black woman
Right.
who writes, and there is my focus. And I happen to believe, or I know for myself, that it's going to be us that changes.
Mm. Yeah.
We'll do all the changing, and white women will take credit for it. They'll get the credit, but it'll be us, and I don't care who gets the credit. Um, so thank you for that.
Mhm.
You're I'm hopping here because you also have the audacity to have the podcast, Imaginary Friends. And I was like listening, and I'm like, it's like I get a free little workshop from Miss Penelope every episode. Like, you're giving gems, right? Like little workshops. And I always ask my writers, what advice do you have for aspiring writers? And you're like the advice queen. You're already out there, like you know, giving it back, paying it forward, however you want to look at it. You're already sharing so much. But I don't know if an aspiring writer is listening
Mhm.
to this, and they're a young Black girl, and they're just like, I really think I have it. I can do something with this writing thing.
Mhm.
What are the three most important pieces of knowledge? I don't want to
Mhm.
say advice, of knowledge that you can share with them.
Three pieces. I think the best advice anyone ever gave me, I found, was to do it first. Prioritize the writing. There's so many people who want to write. I hear people, oh, I want to write a book. They hear that I'm a writer. I mean, if you really want to, you have to prioritize it. So I do it first thing in the morning. I'm self-employed. I have had my own business for a long time, so I have more flexibility in my time, but I had to get up earlier. I had to start getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning and writing in the mornings, because if I was waiting till after the workday and I was exhausted, I wasn't getting it done. And so that really changed and allowed me to finish things that I wanted to finish. And just as simple as do it first. Really prioritize what you want to do. The second thing would be to get a community, because writing is such a solo endeavor. I started a mastermind group with other writers, and we meet every week and we just talk about our business problems. Sometimes we talk about our craft or plot problems. And it's just this sisterhood, essentially, of people that I can rely on and talk to. We meet online because we're in different locations physically, but having a community, a writing group, a critique group, some kind of organization that you go to is just, there's plenty of groups online. Um, Start your own, go to workshops, meet people. Like, that's how kind of I found these people, and super helpful, because otherwise you feel alone and you're like, is
Mhm.
it just me doing this? Is it just me going through this? And it doesn't have to be. Like, we have to write alone unless you have a co-writer, but you don't have to be alone throughout
Right.
the career stuff. Um, and I guess the third one, like, I'm always still studying. I'm always
Mhm.
still taking courses, reading books. I don't think that's going to stop, because it's a craft. It's like a lifelong pursuit. And I'm really interested in getting better and, finding new techniques, but also not listening to everyone, really there's so much advice out there. And
Mhm.
some of it's bad advice. It's good for other people, but it's not good for you. So learn, but like, be very careful about who you listen to. Like, try something, and if it's not resonating, feel free, like, to get rid of it, to not do it. Even if some super successful author says, well, you have to do it this way. It's like, no,
Mhm.
no one has to do anything anyway. Like, do it the way that it works for you.
Right.
Because sitting out here trying to follow someone else's process is just a recipe for failure.
Wow. Yeah. Good. You're very good.
Thank you.
Now, this is my my kind of petty side, because I am that petty girl. I'm not. I realize the more and more I talk to people, I should probably keep my thoughts about myself to myself. But if you had to pretend that I'm a big wig in the publishing industry, and you wanted me to take a message back to the publishing industry, other big wigs, what do you want me to tell them?
Ooh. Um, I think that like, mid-listers, So, people who are not the biggest bestsellers, just regular authors selling books. But I think that midlisters should have more support. I mean, you could probably have more best-selling authors if the midlisters were supported more. And that could, promotion, marketing, all of that stuff that kind of, you kind of get left behind a lot of times if you're not on the New York Times bestsellers list. So publishers make most of their money from a very tiny percentage of their authors and their books. And that's a very strange way to run a business, but it's a way it's always been. So maybe trying other business models to support, like if the purpose is to get more books into the marketplace, and it feels like you have all of these authors you're publishing on these books every year, then some of them you just don't do anything for. Do a little bit more for everybody, and maybe just like I don't want to say redistribute the wealth a little bit, but yeah, redistribute some things, because you could potentially make more profit, sell more books by shining a spotlight on a wider swath of authors and books.
That's really great advice. I am not a big wig, but that is
Maybe
really
someone will
great
listen.
advice.
They'll find this.
I hope so. We are ready for the game.
Okay.
Miss Penelope. And I chose these words specifically for you, except for the last one. So, title of the game, Tell the Whole Story. And it's just a reminder about the rules. I give you a word. You tell me a personal anecdotal story that ends with either hashtag bookish, hashtag writing while Black, or hashtag writer's life.
Okay. I'm going to write that down.
Are you ready?
I think so.
Your first word is scientific.
Ooh, scientific. So I told the story about getting a B in chemistry. Physics, I love physics. I love quantum physics. I like thinking about it, reading about it. I don't understand anything that I read. In high school, I actually got a D in physics. It was a curve. So D was actually the highest, a high grade. Anyway, I love it. I in my world building, I actually do take scientific concepts. I read like science articles and extrapolate some kind of story thing from them that will make sense to no one. A scientist will read this and not see it, but it makes sense to me. Hashtag writing life.
Oh my gosh, I love that. When you said physics, I was all over it. Like AP physics got a 5. I love physics. And when you said quantum physics, I use so much quantum physics in and in the most obscure ways too.
Right? Yeah.
Yes. It's almost spiritual for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. Well, there we go. Your next word is tantamount.
Tantamount. That's an interesting word. So I think that I always think about, the first thing that comes to mind is tantamount to failure. Like you think that not selling well enough, for example, you feel like a failure. Like I have, with a longer series, the later books are going to sell less than the first books. Of course, that's the way things go. One thing that has felt like a failure in my career is audiobook rights for Earth Singer Chronicles. They have not yet made an audiobook of Requiem of Silence because of the sales of the other audiobooks have been low. And I get requests for it regularly from people who have listened, and it's out of my control. It's one of those things that I've tried to buy the rights back. I keep trying I can make it myself to have it, but having them not do that is tantamount to failure for me in that regard. Hashtag writer's life.
Wow. Okay. Sorry. I'm just, okay. Organic is your next one.
Organic. I view world building as very organic because I try to do it alongside plot and character development. And that's one of the things that I talk about and like I teach in the class that I do. And when I talk to other writers, it's like, how can you make them all come together? Because too many fantasy people and sci-fi people will build a world for years and not have a story, not have a book at the end of these years. So it's organic. It comes from the characters. The world comes from the ideas and the initial idea that I have for the story. And I build them as I go. And so they're woven together. And that has helped, I think, in any success that I've had with world building, is making it as organic as possible. Hashtag bookish.
You are killing it.
Thank you.
Gosh. All right. Your next word is reality.
Reality. Yeah, I think that the word that comes to mind is verisimilitude, like truthiness. We're trying to create either an invented world, or my latest book takes place in our world, in Washington, D.C. So I started writing books in our world. I always have. And you're trying to make them as realistic as possible, so it's close to reality while still being this fictional world that is immersive and transportive and takes you to a different place. And so all of these craft, the reason why I'm always studying craft is to find other little ways to make reality alive on the page in a fictional way, in almost hyper reality. Like you want to sink into something that is recognizable to your daily life, but also more interesting. I think that's why we read fiction. So hashtag writing while Black.
Yeah. And your last word isn't really a word, but it's what I ask everybody. So give me one yuck and one yum.
Ooh, just in general. A yuck, coffee. I don't understand coffee. My husband has lots of different, he loves coffee, and it just smells like death to me. I don't know why people drink. Yum. I'm going to go with my favorite food, which is biscuits. My favorite food is always, now I actually have to be gluten-free now, but I found this amazing gluten-free flour that I still make my biscuits, and they just make me happy. So
what gluten-free flour are you using?
It's because I can't eat rice flour either. It's called Jessica's. It's on Amazon. I think it's called Jessica's flour, because most gluten-free flour has rice flour, and I can't do that. And this is, 1-for-1, very similar, makes great biscuits.
It's Jessica's gluten-free.
I believe so.
I have to. I'm gluten-free and not because of celiac, but like allergies, I've developed.
Yeah, no, just it makes me feel bad. Like when I can eat it, and I'll just feel bad after, and I'll be sluggish.
Right.
I'm trying to optimize, my productivity and cutting out things that just make me feel bad. So
yeah. Jessica's. Okay, because I've been looking for a good gluten-free flour. My mom bakes the best cakes, but
no, it's tough once you go down that route.
Yeah, but I'm also trying to cut out refined sugars. So what to do?
Right.
What to do? Okay, but I do love her cake.
Yeah,
I love cake. Gonna be here always. Look, I'm justify and enable myself. All right, man, it's been awesome.
Yeah, it's so great talking to you.
I just want to please read your books on audio and just send them to me. Send them to me. I love your voice. I love what you say. I love your podcast, and I love what you're doing, really, and I love that you're so smart. I'm so serious. I really enjoy talking with intelligent people who write intelligently or intelligent. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I enjoy that. And
that's what's fun about these.
So thank you for being so freaking brilliant that you blew my mind today.
Thank you.
What kind of counselor would I be? What kind of therapist would I be if I didn't give you homework?
Okay.
Not a good one, right?
Right.
So your homework is to tell me who needs to be the next person on my proverbial couch.
I think that you should have Cerise Rennie Murphy on your couch, because she is one of my closest friends. She's an amazing fantasy and science fiction author. She is an entrepreneur. She just got an award from SIFWA for her community building. She started a virtual conference, and she's one of the most empathetic humans that I've ever met. So I think she would be a wonderful guest.
What a glowing endorsement. Gosh. Everybody step your game up when you're doing your homework. I want endorsements like that. Very good. Now, how do you say her name?
Cerise Rennie Murphy.
Cerise.
Yes.
Okay. Pretty. Cerise Rennie Murphy, your friend. Leslie Penelope just called you out, so be expecting an email from me. Can you tell the listeners how to best get in touch with you and what's next for you?
So my author website is lpenelope.com, and you can get to my podcast and courses at myimaginaryfriends.net. And I have the third book in my paranormal romance series, Brutal Fortress, will be coming out next sometime soon. I don't know when. I haven't finished writing it yet. And also, I have a work in progress on, which is from Orbit, coming out from my traditional publisher next year, probably, which is the one that, without a title currently, but it's about all Black towns in the South, and an all Black town being threatened by the construction of a dam. And so they have to find a magical way to save this thriving all Black town. So stay tuned for that.
Will it be like historical science?
It is historical fantasy. Yes.
Is that a thing, or are you making up a genre?
No, The Monsters We Defy, which was my last book, which took place in 1925 in Washington, D.C., was also historical fantasy.
Oh my God, I did not know that was a thing.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I didn't make it up, but it's a thing that's kind of growing. I think that there's more. I think if you think about, well, real world, our world, fantasy in our historical time periods is, I can think of a couple of other books, but yes, it's growing. I'm in it. I'll be in this space for a while. So
I love that. I'm so excited because I love historical fiction.
Oh yeah.
And I love fantasy. And what did you do? You blended?
Yes.
Okay, so look, I think I already know where I'm going to start with you, with your catalog. Which
read The Monsters We Defy, because it's a standalone. You don't have to start this long, infinite series. You can read a nice standalone and be about your business.
Thank you, because you hit it. Boom, bing, right there, nail on the head. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. I've enjoyed this conversation, and I hope we stay in touch.
Yeah, thank you.
Success. And if you ever need anything from the therapist who's not licensed, I'm your girl. Yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ella. It's been really great.
Thank you for joining me for this session of Black Writer Therapy. Be sure to follow and leave a review wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And keep the conversations going on Instagram using our hashtag Black Writer Therapy. I'm your host and unlicensed therapist, Ella Shawn, reminding you to be kindest to yourself first, always and in all ways. See you guys next week. Bye.